think whatever talking I want to do, we'll do here, and then we'll walk over to the grave because it's a little easier to find room here. Okay, my name is Chaim. This is my friend Baruch, and we both knew Chuck pretty well.
You guys put in your tzitzit not in the graveyard because they can't. The people that passed away can't do mitzvot, so you have to put in your tzitzit. Thank you, Nathan. It's a mitzvah.
So we're very happy to meet you. And we heard that our friend is memorialized in the school, and our mutual friend was apparently involved with that memorialization. Contacted me, and we were very happy to heed the call, as it were. So let me tell you about Chuck Hornstein, who Hebraized his name to Haran when he made Aliyah and joined the army. Haran, I think he just took it because of the sound, because of Hornstein, Hey, Reish, Nun. But do you know who Haran was in the Tanakh, by the way?
Haran.
Vayamot Haran al terach aviv. I think it's a pasuk. No. Al pnei terach aviv. You know what I said?
You can correct Chaim.
So Haran was Abraham's brother. There's a nice midrash about him, but that's not the subject. So he Hebraized his name. Chuck was born in 1950. To you, that seems like a long time ago, but he was younger than me. So I always looked at him as a younger kid. And frankly, when I first met him, we weren't of the same age group, so we weren't that friendly yet. But you know, as you get older, the difference in age becomes less significant. I must say that the first time I heard the name Chuck Hornstein was from another friend of ours who was our madrich in Beitar, which was the youth movement that we belonged to, a Zionist organization, which believed in militant work for Israel. We had a madrich who then became our colleague. Also, the age difference has always changed. David Sprung. And David one day told me, we knew Chuck because he was a kid in summer camp, in Camp Beitar. But David was his phys ed teacher in George Washington High School in Manhattan. And you know about George? I see you shaking your head. What did he tell me about Chuck? He told us, it wasn't a private conversation, that there was a time of a lot of militancy in New York, black power and all of this, and Chuck decided that he was going to wear a kippah to the school. He wasn't religious. He wasn't brought up in a very observant home. He was brought up just by his mother, by the way, because his parents split when he was very young, and then they moved to Manhattan. But because of this thing of Jewish pride that he had, he decided that he's going to wear a kippah to school. Whatever happens, happens. And he got into a couple of scrapes here and there, but it was important to him. And David, our teacher, said, "This is amazing. I mean, look at this little kid. He was like 15. I was a freshman in college, so he must have been 16 when this story happened." And that was the first time I heard the name. I said, I was impressed, and I was not much more than that. And then that summer we were in camp together. I had some pictures. Where are the pictures?
I'll give them to you.
No. I think I left them on the grave. I printed some pictures to show you. If I was better at technology, I'd managed to bring a laptop. I'll show you on a laptop. So I'll just pass it around. He was a camper in Camp Beitar. This is a picture of him in camp with one of our friends from, now lives in Toronto. He became, after a number of years, a Royal Mounted policeman in Canada. Barak Hafler. Here's another picture of him in camp. And that summer in camp, I was a division head. And he should have been a counselor in training. But he was much more mature than all the other people his age. So we gave him all kinds of special tasks, special tafkidim. So he did different things in camp. And mainly he was inspirational. Now, do you know that in New York there is a parade every year for Yom Ha'atzmaut, for Israel Independence Day? I don't know if your school
Our
participates.
school used to when parents were ready to make the trip.
Okay, because it's a bit far from Cherry Hill. We were our organization was very instrumental in starting that parade. In fact, the first year it happened, the Jewish agency said, no, you can't do this, it'll cause too much problems, so we're going to march. But eventually it caught on, and it now marches up Fifth Avenue. This was probably the first parade up Fifth Avenue. This guy here, this is Chuck. And you can try to find me in the picture too. You can, take your time, pass it around. You'll see how we were active in the movement. 1967, you know about the Six-Day War, right? Baruch was actually in the first group of volunteers that came to Israel 3 weeks before the war.
2 weeks.
2 weeks before the war. The very first group of American Jewish, or Jews from anywhere in the world came, was a group of Beitarim from our movement. And I think Chuck was in that group too.
He was too young.
She was too young.
No, not Chuck Hornsey. I meant Bucky.
Bucky
was in that
Bucky was in the
group.
group, yeah.
Chuck was too young to come as a volunteer. I was not in that first group. I was in a group that came later. But we all met up here in Israel.
Do they know
And-
Bucky?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. You call him Bucky or
Bucky.
I call him Bucky.
Mr. Buckman? I don't know.
Mr. Buckman.
Mr. Buckman.
Mr. Myron Buck.
You can call him Bucky. Tell him I gave you permission. Anyway, he was in the same group as Baruch. I came, as I said, a couple of weeks later. But we met up here in Israel. And the person who founded Beitar, his name was Zev Jabotinsky. I don't know if that name is familiar to you. His Yortzeit. This is Chuck.
Which one's you?
Oh, which one's me? The good-looking guy carrying the Israeli flag.
We want some?
So you could see that the age difference became less important as time went on. This must have been taken in 1966 or maybe 67.
If I'm not in it, it was taken 66.
67. Or maybe 67.
Okay, 60. Could be
Yeah,
66 or
because
67.
when the parade marched, I think you guys were already in Israel. Because the whole problem started on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and that year the parade was like a week after Yom Ha'atzmaut. Anyway, every year in Israel, the members of our movement and people who respect and honor Jabotinsky's memory, now it's a national day that the Prime Minister comes to, the President of Israel comes to. In those days, there was only close movement members. So we had, this was near the Kotel. You can't really tell that there was where the Kotel is, because on the side there's a lot of still ruins before it was all fixed up. But this was, we always do it on the Hebrew date, which is Kaftet B'Tammuz, usually at the end of July, maybe beginning of August, depending on how it works out in the calendar. So here again, by coincidence, we both find ourselves next to each other holding flags. This time only Israeli flags. You know, it's not in New York, so we don't need American flags. Here, there are two pictures of the same event, which shows you that Chuck.
Good that you took these pictures.
Yeah, I had them in my computer, so I got them from different sources. This. What? So you could see that Chuck came to Israel in '67, but not. He didn't come as a volunteer because the Jewish agency wouldn't accept him. He was, I think, 17, something like that, maybe not even. And he came, and again, the same David Strum that was his teacher in New York, started a new settlement before the Six-Day War, which then was on the border. But because of the results of the war, Tzur Natan, which is right not far from where we all live, near Kfar Saba, they both live in Kfar Saba, I live in Hod HaSharon. It's right near there. It was then a border settlement, but then it became in the middle of the country, and it became a civilian settlement. It started out as an army settlement, and it was called Tzur Natan. Chuck came and lived with him for a while, and if you drive by now, you'd never recognize it. This is the same place. It's all out in the open and so on. So he stayed here for about a year. I think, more or less. We all went back to the States as volunteers at the end of the summer, continued college or whatever we were doing. Chuck stayed here for about a year. Again, he was young, but even though he was really quite brilliant, he didn't want to continue studying school. He wanted to join up the Israeli army. But his brother was in Vietnam. So he didn't want to drive his mother too crazy. So he decided to postpone his his induction into the Israeli army. So he stayed in New York. He became very active in all kinds of Jewish causes, Zionist causes. At that time, I think it was in 1969. To you, probably sounds like ancient history. We had to organize a demonstration against the Iraqi government, because the Iraqi government at that time hanged 8 Jews for supposedly being spies for Israel. They were active probably in Zionism. I don't know if they were spies for Israel or whatever, but they hanged them. And we had a big demonstration, and I think Chuck was arrested actually at that demonstration because the police didn't like what we were doing. And then I sort of went my way, he went his way, and at that point actually I think Baruch should continue the story because they made Aliyah together.
On February
So
7th,
by the way, here's more pictures of him when he came back to the year that he spent in Israel.
on February 17th, 1969. That means one more month, 48 years ago, Chuck and I landed in Eretz Yisrael. We made Aliyah together. You're really getting a picture of Chuck. He was very rambunctious. He was very bright. He was very rambunctious. Always wanted action. Always wanted to be ahead of the game all the time. And so the middle of '68, he said, "Baruch, I want to go back there. Come on." He says, "Let's go." So I would have maybe gone a year or two later, but Chuck sort of said, "Yalla, let's go do it." And both of us decided that when we make Aliyah, it's not just Aliyah, but try to be as chalutzik as possible in 1969, 48 years ago. Chalutzik pioneering. So we decided we were going to go ahead and to live in a place that used to be called the Wild West, because it was up until '67 on the Jordanian border. But after it, no longer the Jordanian border, it became a hotbed of terrorist activity. The first Al-Fatah, the person, the Palestinian terrorist, who was caught at Amatzia. That's the name of the place that we went to live. It was called the Wild West because it was cattle country. Both of us were cowboys. And we had it, and there was cattle rustling, terrorist activity, and we were on horses and guns, so therefore the people used to call the area the Wild West, but that's where Chuck wanted to go. And I was in the way, I followed him, said, "Yeah, it's a great idea." I also had been there in 1965 and for a while. And then he decided that he was eventually ready to go to the army. We all thought maybe going to university. I stayed in university. He was really bright. He could have been anything that he wanted. He had memory, ability of analysis, really, really good. But he felt the need, like he changed the name to Haran. I didn't change my name. Chaim didn't change his name, and no one's going to say we weren't committed Jews. But he, it was in his blood. It was in his soul. And he joined the Golani brigade. Golani is considered a little bit like the Marines, I think.
The Rangers.
Like Rangers, like the real top unit. Because the funny thing is that he actually wanted to go to a place where there was a lot more constant action. Because when you're in the army, there's not constant action. There's a war, but he wanted to join the border police, which is one of the toughest units. But the army wouldn't let him because he had qualities that they needed him in places where he could take command. And so therefore, it was very interesting that they didn't let him join they put him not only into the Golani, but he went into the recon unit of Golani. Recon unit is those who go before the soldiers. They tell them which way to go in. They scout out to see where the enemy is and how to get around the enemy. So therefore, they have the most dangerous job and the most important job. So he was in a recon unit, and in the '73 war, Yom Kippur War broke out. It broke out. It's called the Yom Kippur War. Broke out 2:00 in the afternoon. Yom
If I
Kippur.
can just say something before the war. In July of '73, that summer, he was given leave to go back to New York. It was actually around his birthday. I was in a camp upstate near Albany, and I don't remember. I was talking to Baruch as we came. Who actually contacted me? You know, those days we didn't have cell phones or email, all that stuff. Somebody sent me a postcard, and the Chuck was coming. I couldn't get away, and frankly, I said, okay, I'll see Chuck some other time. And unfortunately, there was no other time to do that. But he came to New York, so '73, he must have been 23. He came to celebrate a birthday, lots of people went, had a good time in New York, and then he came back to Israel.
So Chuck, the Yom Kippur War broke out. It was mainly a war, the first 2 weeks, mainly was a war of airplanes and tanks. But the top units, the recon units, went in to take pinpoint positions. And one of the positions that was taken by the Syrians was what was called the Eyes of Israel. Eyes of Israel meaning the area where we had radar and electronics that could look into Syria. And the Syrians captured that, and it was of crucial importance to take back. And that was the top of Mount Hermon, the highest mountain in Israel. And there was 2 attempts to take back the Hermon, and Golani and Sayeret Golani, the recon unit of Golani, were the ones who were there. And the first one, which didn't succeed, he was leading. The second one, which did succeed leading. He was amongst his soldiers, who we spoke to afterwards, said that they're not sure they would have, his specific unit, I don't want to make him the hero of the entire Hermon, but of his unit, that it was him getting up under fire, saying, Yalla chevra, kadima, let's go on, forward, forward, forward. He's not sure, with all the firepower that was going on from the Syrians, that they would have moved forward. That's the kind of guy he was, all the time. Didn't make a difference what it was. Was it in Iraq, in New York, or in Israel, or Amatzia? He always was, and he got up there twice, which in itself is an amazing, amazing, amazing deed. Then, on the first day of Holomoid Sukkot, in a random patrol, nothing is dangerous. He's in Syrian territory, but Syrian MiGs came by, and they strafed, and they means they were machine gun. MiGs, Russian-made jets with machine gun fire, just shot him and his friends. And that's he went to 2 burials. First of the burial where a lot of people were killed, a lot of Israelis. It was a very, very difficult time. The first, he was buried together with everyone else in the Hari, in the north of Israel. And only when things quieted down and it was time for everyone was out of the army, he was brought here to Har Herzl. But what I end is that when we talk about Chuck, it's not just to tell you a story about her, but to learn what commitment means. He didn't want to die. I mean, it's not what commitment is about dying. Commitment is about living and doing. And that's what Chuck wanted to do. He wanted to build Israel. And maybe what we can ask you is that if you remember on the first day Holomoid Sukkot, first second, about Chuck, it'll be a big mitzvah. Chaim and I and his friends who have all made Aliyah, we've been coming here for 44 years. The army, when they go ahead and they ask us, because there's a chazan with soldiers from his unit always comes, and we're going to be here in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks we're coming
We don't
here.
usually come on the yahrzeit.
Yahrzeit, because we come when because everybody's busy, families, work, so therefore we take a time.
And unfortunately, we have another friend who's buried here.
Right. So we have two friends who died days apart, all from the same group. So we choose a day when it's most convenient for everybody to be able to come. And we've been doing it for 44 years. When we come here, there's always a chazan who comes, an army chazan, together with soldiers from the unit. And the chazan always asks a few words, what is, and when they hear that we've been coming for 44 years, it's like they're blown away. How is it that for 44 years you guys have no understanding yet what 44 years means? To come and not to forget. And in Chuck's case, there's literally, except for his friends, nobody to remember him anymore. His mother passed away a couple of weeks ago. That was the place. His brother died a couple of years earlier. So any kind of memory, because Sufat was in the Shema.
So here are two pictures of Chuck as a soldier. And he was an expert on this gun.
My God.
It's like I think in English it's called recoilless. Lotar. How you say lotar? No, not this one. He was another one.
This is a Magach.
A recoilless gun. And this must have been one of the last pictures that he sent back to a mutual friend of ours in Amatia. This might have been taken a week or two before he was killed. The picture that
You don't carry it.
no, that's on a jeep.
Sure. Is that the way you carry it?
So there's a guy who showed a lot of leadership. One of the reasons when the soldiers told us about what happened, that they followed him, not only because of his rank. He was a non-commissioned officer. He was like a company, not a company, I forgot what it's called in English. What's lower than a company? No, company commander. Platoon is high. I know these names in Hebrew more than English. He was older than everyone else. You have to remember, when you go to the army in Israel, you're 18. He went into the army, he was 21. So they all sort of treated him like their daddy,
Saba.
like the old man. Like I told you, that age, a few years makes a big difference. But the fact that he was doing what he was doing, instead of like most Olim went to university, or if they went to the army, the way I eventually did, just for a couple of months. But he joined, like Baruch said, so we want to remember him for what he did and what he contributed. And unfortunately, his life was cut short. And he died at the age of 23, just beyond his 23rd birthday. So I think now maybe is the time to walk over to the kever. I didn't bring the siddur.